Welcome back to 1834. Le Bourdonnais is still winning 5 games to 3 and he only needs to win one more game to take this 4th match. Will he do it, or will McDonnell start his comeback here? In the guest commentary box we've got Baudric, he's already ready. Let's begin. McDonnell begins with e4, we have c5, the Sicilian, knight to f3, knight to c6, and now d4 in the centre. So the pawn captures, the knight captures back, and Le Bourdonnais attacks the knight again with e5. So McDonnell moves the knight a third time to capture the knight on c6, the b-pawn captures, and now he goes for bishop to c4, lining up on the f-pawn. Le Bourdonnais develops his knight to f6, and last time in game number 15, McDonnell here played queen to e2, and Le Bourdonnais ended up with a pair of strong central pawns but drew after 30 moves. So this time McDonnell switches it up a little bit and plays bishop to g5, pinning the knight. And we continue with bishop to e7, continuing to develop normally, and McDonnell now goes for qe2, the Queen Elizabeth move. We have d5 in the centre, and before withdrawing with the bishop here, McDonnell captures the knight, the bishop captures back, and now the bishop retreats. Le Bourdonnais takes the opportunity to castle, and McDonnell says that's a great idea and does the same. And a5 now from Le Bourdonnais, pushing on the queen side on the wing. A good idea for McDonnell would be rook to d1. This would be fine, lining up behind the queen, but first he decides to capture in the centre. Le Bourdonnais captures back, and he's once more ended up with two very nice strong central pawns. We'll see how this works out for him later on in the game. Rook to d1 now from McDonnell, as we said, X-raying the queen, but Le Bourdonnais now pushes d4. You'll observe that McDonnell has an undeveloped knight here on b1. He could bring it to d2 here, but first he decides to push c4. Now, Baudric is very excited about this because he knows the en passant rule and will always play it when it's available. But Le Bourdonnais doesn't want to lose his queen, Baudric, so he decides not to play the en passant move. Instead, he gets his queen out of the way to b6. Now, McDonnell might be a little bit nervous about the pawn getting pushed here and threatening the bishop, so he gets the bishop out of the way. And no, Baudric, you can't just capture the pawn here, because the bishop can capture the h7 pawn with check, and then you're going to lose your queen. So Le Bourdonnais doesn't go for that. A nice idea for him, though, might be to push the g-pawn, get the bishop back into the gap and push the f-pawn and get an attack going this way. But Le Bourdonnais goes for neither of these ideas. Instead, he plays bishop to b7. McDonnell continues by developing his knight, and again, Baudric, you can't capture the pawn here because then queen to d3 is coming, and either it's going to end in a mate or become very drawish. For example, if you block here, the rook's coming across, you're going to push the pawn, and then everything just filters down to a drawish endgame. There's a queen exchange and the bishops come off. And there we go, looking very drawish. And Le Bourdonnais wants to win here. He's very close to winning this 4th match, and he doesn't want to just go for draws. So instead of capturing the pawn here, he plays his rook across to e8 and x-rays the white queen. McDonnell continues with knight to e4. It's attacked by the light square bishop here, but it is defended twice, so it feels perfectly safe. It's also threatening the dark square bishop here, and Le Bourdonnais wants to keep this piece, so he retreats it to d8. This move also allows space for these pawns to advance should he wish. But in the meantime, McDonnell pushes his own advance, c5, to threaten the queen, so the queen moves out of the way, and you'll notice it's lining up on this nice diagonal to threaten checkmate here, should the knight move. Of course, McDonnell spots this idea and pushes f3 to add another defender to the knight, but also to add more pieces between this checkmating square and the queen. Le Bourdonnais continues with bishop to e7, and he's attacking this pawn twice now with only one defender, so McDonnell defends with his rook. This confuses Baudric. He says, well, there's still 2 attackers and only 1 defender, why can't you just capture it? Well, if you do that, you're going to lose your queen again, like this similar tactic, capturing the pawn with check, leaving the attack on the queen. So don't do that. Perhaps a better idea for Le Bourdonnais in this position would be queen to d7, because then, should this bishop manage to make its way to a4, you can actually block it with your own bishop, and you're avoiding this skewer. However, Le Bourdonnais played neither of these ideas. Instead, he went for f5 and attacked the knight. We now have queen to c4 with check, and McDonnell thinks he's spotted a tactic here. The bishop is going to be safe on a4, as we mentioned, with the skewer after this check, because the queen is now defending it. So the king moves out of the way here to h8, and we indeed have the skewer. So nicely done, McDonnell. We like that. I'm starting to suspect that he might be in beast mode under those shades of his. But In the meantime, Bourdonnais says, fine, have my rook, and moves his queen out of the way, and of course McDonnell does capture it. Now, does Bourdonnais capture back the bishop here, or the knight? Well, he decides to go for the knight, because in doing so, he's achieved a massive amount of pawns in the centre here that he might be able to do something with later in the game. Bourdonnais suggests capturing the pawn in the middle here, but if you were to do that, the queen is coming in with check, and after you move your king, the bishop is capturing in the center, and it's looking extremely hairy. For example, if you were to try to save your bishop in this position, then the black bishop is just going to sacrifice itself, and then it's just going to lead to checkmate here. And that's check again, you have to move the king, and now you're completely dead. So Bourdonnais says, okay, maybe that wasn't such a great plan. Maybe something a little bit more cunning would be to save your bishop up front. Maybe bishop to b5. Well, if you were to do that, then again, you're going to get checked with the queen, and after your move, the pressure is going to be unbearable. For example, the pawn captures back, and the bishop's coming in, and that's just straight up checkmate. All roads lead to checkmate in that case. So what does McDonnell do instead in this position? He can't save the bishop or capture the pawn in the middle. Well, he tries c6, which isn't too bad. It blocks the bishop from attacking the king down the diagonal, so all the mating threats we went through just now no longer work. And it also attacks the bishop back here. But Bourdonnais feels that the action is all with his central pawns, so he leaves his bishop hanging. He captures the f pawn now. Should McDonnell capture the bishop here, well, he's getting checkmated in very short order. The queen is coming into e3 with check. The king has to move, and after the pawn captures with check, the only move is to recapture with the king. The rook's coming in, and you're getting shoved into the corner and getting roughly checkmated. So McDonnell realizes this. He's not as stupid as he looks. He doesn't capture the bishop here. Instead, he defends everything with rook to c2, getting on the second rank. Now, Bourdonnais continues regardless with the check, and the best move for McDonnell now would be to bring his rook across to block it, and you might even get some drawing chances if you do this. For example, if the pawn captures here, you're bringing your queen in and forcing a queen exchange, and after bishop to c8, you're getting the bishop out of there to d7. It's all looking very drawish. But sadly, McDonnell does not block with his rook here. Instead, he puts his king in the corner, which allows Bourdonnais to activate beast mode. McDonnell says, you what? Well, that's my trick. He quickly puts his shades back on because it is quite bright. But he is starting to sweat a little bit beneath his fringe. Meanwhile, in beast mode, bishop to c8, bishop to d7, and now the pawn is pushed, so McDonnell blocks. But now the other pawn is coming and threatening the other rook, so the other rook moves out of the way. We have a bishop exchange on d7, and now McDonnell is one square away from promoting this pawn on the 7th rank. However, the promotion square is extremely heavily protected. There doesn't seem to be any clear way through. Bourdonnais continues his push with e4. McDonnell plays his queen to c8, and even Bourdonnais is not dumb enough to suggest capturing the queen here, because after the promotion with the capture, you're getting very swiftly checkmated, so well done Bourdonnais for not suggesting that. Instead, Bourdonnais blocks with his bishop, and he's completely fine, so McDonnell brings his queen back again to try to help out with the defense of this terrible situation that he's in down on the white side of the board. We have queen to e1 now in beast mode from Bourdonnais, and again, you can't capture, similarly to the other side of the board. You can't capture here because you're getting a promotion and a mate. So what does McDonnell do? Well, he brings his rook back to c1 to defend everything. Now, if you capture the queen here, you're going to recapture with the rook, and everything will be fine. But now the d pawn is coming. What can McDonnell do? This rook is now under attack. Well, he tries, with one last gasp, queen to c5, threatening the rook here, which would come with mate. But, unsurprisingly, beast mode Bourdonnais spots this and simply defends by moving his rook to g8. This rook is still under attack, so McDonnell moves it out of the way to block the pawn. But now the e-pawn is coming, and McDonnell has run out of any good moves. He tries queen to c3, but that's no good, because beast mode Bourdonnais has a queen sacrifice. Queen captures on d1. The rook captures back here, but Bourdonnais plays e2, and whatever McDonnell does, he's toast. For example, if you try to get the rook out of there, then of course one of these pawns is promoting, you're getting forced to capture, and then after the pawn promotes with capture again, that's mate, you're done. If you try to make a path to escape here, you're just going to get attacked by a lot of queens. This is check, you have to move, and that's another queen, and it's not going to be long before you're finished. If instead of trying to escape, from here, you try to get the queen to help, for example, queen to f6, the pawn here is promoting, you're going to get forced to get a rook here, and you're going to be done in a very short order. So yeah, back in this very nice position, it was here that McDonnell resigned the game. Bourdonnais wins match 4, 6 games to 3, and he's just coming back out of beast mode now. So let's give him a crown, very nice. And by the way, this game is actually the most famous to ever come out of this series of matches, and the one that everybody thinks of when they hear the names of Bourdonnais and McDonnell. It is truly an immortal game that will live forever. Bourdonnais feels very sorry for McDonnell, he looks very sad, so he decides to update his profile picture. That's an Irish harp, so that's very appropriate. Now, this was only game 9 of 11, not including draws, and they will play out the remaining 2 games because that's what real gentlemen did back in the day. And finally, you probably thought that I'd forgotten Pride Month. In honour of that, I can reveal that my sexual preference is none of your f***ing business.